Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Craig, and I do Grubhub in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is known all over the world as the seat of the American government, our nation's capital. It is home to important government buildings, monuments, and memorials where millions of visitors come from all over the world to experience. In 2019 alone, Washington, D.C. welcomed 24.6 million visitors. What I find surprising is that many of these visitors are not aware that DC is actually home to about 700,000 people and is made up of 131 neighborhoods. Man, if I had a dime for every time a tourist on the downtown tourism bus I work for asks me questions like, so, where do people here go to the grocery store? And worse, are there any grocery stores here? People also tend to think that people aren't from DC, as it's commonly referred to as a transient city. Truth of the matter is that many DC resident families go back generations. Personally, I'm a third generation Washingtonian, and my sons make up a fourth generation. Bringing awareness to these misconceptions has been my passion for quite some time. So much so that a few years ago, I created a website about a particular area of DC that I'm from that us locals refer to as East of the River. An area of DC that is separated physically and figuratively from the rest of the city by DC's other river called the Anacostia River. This area has suffered from neglect since it became a predominantly black area in the 1950s. For one thing, it's referred to as a food desert. So DC is divided up into 8 wards, right? East of the River takes up 2 of these wards with 149,750 people. In this entire area, there are only 3 grocery stores. The other 6 wards have 49 stores. About 8 stores per ward. Where east of the river, a mere 1.5 stores per ward. My website grew into a YouTube channel, and that grew into a neighborhood tour I created east of the river in its most popular neighborhood called Anacostia, where the famous Frederick Douglass once lived. I believe this tour brings badly needed spending dollars to the area, along with awareness to this community situation and its rich history. So if I were to win this grant money, I would put it towards growing my neighborhood tours around the city to bring awareness to the millions of people who visit DC every year that this city is much more than monuments and memorials, but more like any other American city with the same kind of challenges. And I also want to say that I'm very grateful to be a Grubhub driver here in Washington, D.C., because it allows me the opportunity to get even closer to this wonderful Washington, D.C. community where many people actually call home. So far, my years of writing a blog about the residential side of D.C., doing a YouTube videos about Washington, D.C. neighborhoods and people has not yet brought the attention of the powers that be. But however, it has brought the attention of someone who just might be in a position of power very soon. She's running for Congress in DC. So she's agreed to come down today and say a few words of how she thinks that my efforts is impacting the community. So without any further ado, here's Reverend Wendy Hamilton.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to share today why I think that Craig Bell's tours are so important and worthy of recognition. I got a chance to join him on the Anacostia tour about 2 months ago, and I learned things about DC that I didn't even know, and I'm running to represent DC. That's why his tours are so important, and they contribute to the overall conversation about what DC is about. So many people in the public confuse DC, the city, with Washington, what's going on over on Capitol Hill. And we like to tell people there's a Washington, that's Capitol Hill, but then there's a DC, and that contains our culture.